Now, without further ado,
and welcome to the C&C Auto Show. And whether you tuned in by radio or internet, we do appreciate you being here. And we are ready for a great time. I just got a really good feeling about this show today. It's going to be a great show. Looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. And again, whether you tuned in by radio or if you're logged in by the internet, we do appreciate you being here. And good morning, John Ryan.
Good morning. How are you?
All right. And we like to answer automotive questions, and we do that by many methods, but our preferred method is by phone. You give us a call, ask the automotive question, and we talk it over, and then we give you an answer or an opinion.
Yeah, we won't even charge you.
We won't charge a penny, and it's what we enjoy doing, love to do it. So if you're looking for a answer to your automotive question, just give us a call. Again, 706-863-5800. Of course, you can also, if you're a Verizon user, push star 580 and they can punch 441-TALK. And if you're looking for a good professional automotive repair facility in almost any area around our beautiful country, just go to NapaAutoCare.com and you can search for a list of Napa Auto Care centers in your area. And if you prefer to do the work yourself, like some people do, just like some people enjoy gardening, some people enjoy working on their car,
Yep.
I highly recommend going to NapaOnline.com and you can search for Napa Auto Parts or a Napa Auto Parts store near you and get the good stuff.
Hey, man, you did pretty good with that.
All right. And we are going to have a good time. And we like to have a theme for each show that we do. And the theme for this show is back to school driving. And we'll be giving tips on driving during the school year. Plus, we'll be available to answer your automotive questions. So if you have a question, we are all yours. So hop in, close the doors, and let's take a ride. And one of my favorite things that I enjoy doing right now is going to the phones.
You want to do just that?
I think we should.
All right, let's go to Steve.
All right, sounds good. Good morning, Steve. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you?
Doing very well.
So I got a question. I have a 1953 Willys Jeep. Are you there?
Yeah, we're still here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's a 24-volt system. And my question is, I drove it Wednesday and it was fine. I went out yesterday to drive and it was dead. I jumped one battery off, from my truck, and it cranked up fine, but it wouldn't keep it charged. So I took the batteries to Advanced Auto, and they told me one battery was bad, and the other one, they would just charge it. So I replaced one of the batteries. The other one charged overnight. I picked it up this morning, and he said it was still bad. It wouldn't charge.
Mm-hmm.
So I hooked everything up again. Jeep still won't crank. I jumped the bad battery off from my truck, and it cranked up fine. So do you think this could be just from a bad battery? If I replace, the bad battery, should it crank up fine?
Steve, I think before you do anything on that truck, you should check to see if you got any warranty coverage.
That wasn't good.
Yeah, no.
Steve, yeah, that's definitely a possibility. If you have a battery with like an open or a total bad cell in it, being a 24-volt system, it's not going to go through the second battery, and then, of course, you're going to have an open in the electrical system, and it won't have the right amount of power going to the starter. So it very well could be the cause of your problem.
Okay.
Yeah, but once the battery's in, you really can't do anything. Any test that you run right now with a bad battery,
Yeah.
then
They'll all be skewed.
is a false reading because you won't know anything. So really you have to start with that basic step of getting a good battery in there before you can tell if your alternator's putting out, because and charging it up overnight was a good thing, because
Yeah,
you really
sure.
can't test the battery either if it's discharged.
Yeah.
So now that you tested it and you know the battery's bad, I would recommend going ahead and putting any bad battery that's in there, and preferably replace those in pairs. And I know that's a little bit of a pain to have to get two at one time, but
Right.
it's a little bit better to go ahead and have them both brand new,
Yeah.
and then hook to the system, find out if you're charging. If you're not charging, then you're going to need a wiring diagram and some time.
That's for sure.
Hey,
Okay.
Steve,
Yes.
you didn't laugh at my warranty joke, so I got a backup plan in case something like that happens. See, I got my own person to laugh.
That's bad when you actually have to have that, though.
Well, it still feels good.
Yeah. Same feeling, huh?
Okay, thank you, Steve.
All right, thank you.
All right,
Steve.
bye-bye. That is it. I mean, it's
true.
it's the same thing.
Is that why you have one on your cell phone, too?
Yeah, you tell a joke, nobody laughs. You just put your earphone in and push the button, and
There you
then
go.
you feel good. Okay, where are we going to?
All right, Aaron, let's go talk to Bill.
I'm a sick puppy.
We know that. Good morning, Bill.
Hey, I've got a 2011 Chevrolet HHR, and my power windows on the rear right passenger side has stopped working altogether, and the right front passenger side is starting not to work. And certain places on the little button on the armrest, I can touch it just right, and it'll go up and down. And I think it's the little armrest controls.
Right.
And Chevrolet wants to say it's the motor, but they have trouble coming down, the one that's starting to cut up now, but don't have any trouble going up. So I think it's the little buttons or the little connections in the armrest.
Right. That is kind of a common thing on those HHRs. It's either one or the other. I know that doesn't do you any justice. But what we see a lot of times is just like you mentioned, they'll either go up or down one way or the other, and then they won't, operate the other motion, whether it be up or down. And you're right. If it goes in one direction, that means that motor's turning in, say, clockwise, and it should just go counterclockwise to roll it back up. So if it goes in one direction, it's pretty safe to say the motor's okay. Of course, unless the linkage or the regulator's binding or something like that. But we have seen quite a few of the switches on that particular model do, funny things like that.
And I got a
Okay.
theory on the window switches. I thought about this. A lot of
got?
heavy thought. Why some cars the switches go bad and some don't.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people get out of their car when it's raining. If
Yeah.
you have a car where nobody gets out of the car raining and it stays dry all the time right there,
Where the switches?
the
yeah.
switch may last longer. Now, that's just a theory. What do you think, Bill?
It may be, because sometimes I do get out, it has gotten wet a little bit.
Yeah.
Or leave
Now,
the
there's
windows
protection there. There's little boots around the stuff to make it where even if you do that, it's supposed to not. But I really think over a period of time, a little moisture gets in there from when it's out.
Now,
there.
do y'all look at those things and work on them, or do I need to go to
absolutely.
a specialty?
Oh,
Yeah, you talked us into it.
we love window switch problems or window motor problems or all that good stuff.
Okay, so I'll just give y'all a call, probably make an appointment to come see you or whatever.
We would absolutely love to look at it.
Okay, thank you.
All
Thank you,
right,
Bill.
and thank you very much. And the number is 706-863-5800. We're going to need to take a real quick break right before we do this.
As soon as
Hey,
we come back, we'll go to Joe.
yeah,
Joey.
and I tell you what, we do need to. We'll give the tech tip right before we go to the break.
All right.
And I won't go into a lot of detail about all those great prizes. The main one I want to mention though is that $10 gift card from Top Notch Car Wash. Also want to mention the hat, the coffee mug, and of course can't get by without mentioning the Answer Detective Quiz shirt. And Cindy has a great job that she loves very much. And last year she ran into a problem because she was late about 3 days out of every week. She could not help being late because she had to get her 9-year-old son on the bus before leaving for work. Well, she would leave at 8 just after the bus arrived. and planned to get to work at 8:30, but it was normally 8:45 before she arrived at work. She didn't know what to do until she heard this show. And when she heard that, we told her a way to get her son on the bus at 8 a.m. and be at work before 8:30. And what did we mention on the show that helped her? And I got to mention that the theme of the show this week is back to school driving.
All right.
So we'll have that. Okay, and we'll be taking that real quick break. If you would hold on for us just a little bit when we return, I'll tell you about something that is about to change in most neighborhoods. And I'll tell you what it is as soon as we return.
Just a smoke in a traffic jam that makes me the bitter. All right, everybody, welcome back to more of today's C&C Automotive Show here on AM 580 and 95.1 FM. News Talk WGAC. Call into the show at 706-863-5800. A free call on the Verizon Wireless Network at star 580. Now let's go back to downtown Augusta. Here's Aaron and JR with more of today's C&C Automotive Show.
And we are back, and the thing that will be changing in the coming weeks in most neighborhoods is pedestrian and vehicle traffic. School will be starting back, and there'll be more cars on the road, school buses, kids at the bus stop, and the key to safety during this time is to be prepared and leave early. Get the kids' clothes ready, the dishes laid out, and what's for breakfast ready to go the night before. That don't happen at all. That way you'll be much more relaxed and a better driver on the way to school, and we are ready to go where, John Ryan?
Okay, let's go to Joey.
Great idea. Good morning, Joey. Welcome to the C&C Auto Show.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can hear you very well.
Oh, good. I've got a 1968 Ford Mustang. It's been in the garage since 1987.
Wow.
Right before I quit driving it, I put rebuilt a brand new 289 engine for it.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, I'm getting ready to pull it out of the garage. I'm curious about the engine as far as spinning it over. Is there something I should do before I spin this engine over for the first time in almost 30 years?
Yeah, what you should do is just sign the title over to either Aaron or myself, and we'll take care of it.
Yep. You won't have any problem at all. We'll take care of that.
No, Joey, you're exactly right. If it's been sitting that long, it'd be a very good idea to do a few things. Number one would be remove the spark plugs and spray some WD-40 or some penetrating oil into the combustion chamber, and let it sit overnight. And then it's a good idea to kind of manually rotate that engine with, say a breaker bar or something like that on harmonic balancer to, break free some of the little rust that's developed on the cylinder walls and stuff like that. Without doing that, you're just going to put a brand new battery in it, hit the key, and there's possibility of it doing some damage to the cylinder walls if that little bit of rust is really good and attached to the cylinder walls. So that WD-40 or one of those penetrating oils would definitely help, break that off, and so that it wouldn't be a dry start also.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and we don't want to forget this part.
Fire extinguisher.
Well, keep a fire extinguisher nearby, but you're going to find that when you start to run that vehicle, how many years has that been? That's been, 10? How many years?
What year did you say, Joey? 87?
Did you park it?
87.
Okay. Yeah, your gas is going to be shot, and the inside of your gas tank is going to be rusted out. So you will need a gas tank for the car. You will, of course, no doubt have to put fresh gas, and you will most likely need to rebuild a carburetor and most likely need a fuel pump. And all of those are just automatic things when one sets up 3, 4, 5 years or longer. To do. Now, the rest of the stuff, you can kind of just see how it works out, see if the brakes are going to leak any. You got to figure that anything made out of rubber stands the possibility of being bad. And that includes your belts, your hoses, your tires, your inside of your master cylinder, inside of your wheel cylinder. Right. All of those parts, when they not run, they get dry, brittle, and they end up breaking. So, but you might as well just plan on the gas tank and go ahead and get the sending unit at the same time. And no doubt there's some great magazines that you can go to order things like that. And they're reasonably priced, really.
Yeah. Or again, if you don't want to do that, we'll just come.
We'll take it off your
hands.
Yep, we'll take it off your hands, and we will display it proudly.
One more question.
Sure.
Is something like that, is that something that you guys do, or are you not?
Well, I'll tell you what we do on cars like that. Each one is an individual basis, and there's times that we may take one like that in. We don't take too many of those in at one time because they are time-consuming. You have to wait on parts, and most cars we try to get in and out in a day, or the longest take a couple of days. So we kind of move cars really quick. When one like that comes in, it does go a little bit slower because we order parts. But one like that, we would more than likely take it in and let you know what you would run just to get it going. And we only do the mechanical part of it. Anything to do with your cosmetic stuff, we would refer you to a place to go.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I appreciate it.
And we appreciate it also. And John Ryan, where are we going?
Let's go over to Moses.
Perfect. Good morning, Moses, and welcome to the C&C Auto Show.
Good morning, and thanks for iHeartRadio. I'm listening to you from St. Louis, Missouri this morning, where I've been the last week. And
all right,
let's try to answer the quiz. You got old Blue ready?
Oh, we do. Let's go ahead and do Blue. And if you don't mind, I may give the question one more time because some people may not have heard the question. And it was that Cindy had a great job. She loves it very much. But last year she ran into a bad problem because she was late about 3 days out of every week. She didn't get in bad trouble, but a little bit. She could not help being late because she had to get her 9-year-old son on the bus before leaving for work. She would leave at 8 o'clock. Plenty of time, well organized, but just after the bus arrived and planned to get to work at 8:30, she was always late. It just plain took longer before she arrived at work. She did not know what to do until she heard this show, and we will find out in just a second if Moses told her what it was. What is it, Moses?
Well, get little Johnny ready to go to school early. Mm-hmm. Then leave enough time to meet that bus where it started at to put him on the bus. Yeah. Then she go to work, and she would save some time. And of course, if the bus was coming from the direction of her work, then certainly that would get her to work on time.
Well, the problem is she would leave. She couldn't leave until he was on the bus, and every 3 days out of the week she was late, no matter what. And she tried, and she was getting up as early as she could because she just couldn't leave any earlier. So
right, but if she's not putting him on the bus at home, she's putting him on the bus 15 minutes away in the direction of her work.
Well, she really wasn't the same direction as work. It was a different direction.
He's trying to dig you out of the bag here,
Moses. Hear old Blue, and I have some other comments.
Okay. Should we do okay, we are ready for some great comments, Moses.
I want to go back again to littering and cigarette butts, and I want to tie it into water quality and watershed and what's going on with stormwater. There is tens of millions, if not billions, of cigarettes if we're going nationwide, but we'll just take Georgia, for example. That's my state. That's thrown out the windows or into the drains or streets or sidewalks every year. And those cigarette butts have toxins in them. That's the leakage that come from them when they get in the watershed. And it hurts the water quality. Our Attorney General is suing with several other states, the EPA, in reference to water quality issues and if it was a water quality issue as far as stormwater go, they would be concerned about the contaminants that's going into the storm drain versus getting money from individuals to cut ditches. Yeah. So littering, and it go further than that. We're learning that the littering, the Coke bottles that go out, contaminates. The beer bottles and beer cans that go out have contaminants, and it go on and on. Yeah. So
We just need to do a better job and do just what you're doing. Speak up and let other people know how important it is not to litter. And really, if we see somebody littering, you need to mention and say, hey, that's not a good idea, or just pick it up in front of them and put it in the trash can and let them know that it's not a good thing to do. And I think if we all just be a little bit more aware, and of course, hopefully more and more people will be going to the electronic cigarettes, and so then you don't have that problem.
Yeah. Well, let's keep it clean as we go. I think that's important. And if we see someone doing it, we don't want to have a consultation with them.
Yeah.
Then certainly whip out your cell phone and take that picture, and then you have it. Then you can shoot it on to someone or put it on social media to show what type individuals it is.
Yeah, exactly. It can be done in a nice way, and I believe if we all just do just what you're doing, make people more aware, we'll work good. And what's good is you're helping to inform a lot of people on that, and we appreciate it.
Sure thing.
And Moses, you enjoy your trip at St. Louis. That's a beautiful area. Been there a few times.
Well, we're working. We've been working the last 6 days, so it's a working trip. With a bunch of folks that's coming into the St. Louis area, and we're talking water quality and a lot of other quality of life issues.
Very nice. Well, we appreciate all that you do. And thank you very much, Moses. Okay, I'm going to mention one thing real quick that a friend of mine called the shop. This was yesterday, and we mentioned this just before we go to break. I want to remind everybody, you can reach us with your automotive question at 706-863-5800. You just give us a call, star 580 if you have Verizon Wireless, 441-TALK in Aiken, and we would love to answer your automotive question. Now, a friend of mine named Dylan Bredengood, he called yesterday, and one of his co-workers was planning to buy a Honda Accord off Craigslist in the Atlanta area for $5,000. And he asked if he had any tips that I could mention him on buying the car.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you know that when someone buys if someone talks about human build has been done, find out if the oil change has been done regular. Also check the heater and air conditioning, even though it's not wintertime right now, check the heater. Get pictures of the car so you can look at them again, and then have a pre-purchase inspection done. And what I'd recommend doing is going to a Napa Auto Care, NapaAutoCare.com, and finding a shop that person likes and let them do a pre-purchase inspection on the car. And then make sure that you're getting a good title. And if you meet someone on Craigslist and you don't know them, meet them in a good area, a crowded area. Okay, we're going to take a real quick break, and as soon as we return, we'll have more back to school driving tips. We'll be right back.
She's real fine, my 409. She's real fine, my 409, my 409.
All right, everybody, welcome back. C&C Automotive Show continuing this morning here on WGAC. Your calls are welcome always at 706-863-5800. Free advice about your automobile each and every Saturday on the C&C Automotive Show. Now let's go back to downtown Augusta. Here's Aaron and JR with more of today's C&C Automotive Show.
And we are back, and we are ready to answer those automotive questions. All you have to do is give us a call, 706-863-5800. If you're wondering about a little noise that your car makes, or someone's told you that you may need a service performed, you want to find out if you should, or if you have a back-to-school question or a back-to-school driving tip, because we're giving a few tips, and it would be great if other people would call in and give us a tip also.
Yeah, for sure.
So we are ready for those. Now, here's the tip that we have right now. If you have young kids starting back to school, give them a back-to-school safety class. If they ride the bus, talk about obeying the safety rules at the bus stop, getting on and off the bus and riding the bus. If you're riding in a car, buckle those seat belts, and if you're walking, obey those rules for pedestrians, and always cross at crosswalks, obey the traffic signs, obey the traffic lights and the safety patrol instructions, and finally, teach them to be a good role model for their younger brothers and sisters and their friends. And we are ready to go to the calls once again. And John Ryan, where are we going?
And let's go to Danny.
Perfect. And good morning, Danny, and welcome to the C&C Auto Show.
Well, good morning to you.
We are ready to roll.
I got an 02 Chevy Silverado. 4.8. And I just got back from Atlanta, but it wasn't running hot, but when I stopped in traffic, it started to run hot. So what would be that problem?
Danny, have you checked the coolant level?
Yeah.
And is it full?
Yeah, it's full.
Okay. I just wanted to rule that out to be absolutely sure. 02 model has a regular belt-driven fan on the front that's, of course, driven by the water pump. The design behind it is there's a strip on the front of the fan clutch that as the radiator heats up and it starts pulling air across it, the hotter the air gets, the tighter that fan clutch gets to where it spins almost 1-to-1 with that water pump. With you mentioning that it does okay going down the road, of course the airflow comes from the wind that is going through the radiator from the speed of the vehicle. So at idle, it's relying on that belt-driven cooling fan. So if it's not pulling enough air across the, number one, AC condenser, and number two, the radiator, it's going to the temperature going to start to creep up. There's a few tests that you can do even in your driveway to check that out. One would be pop the hood, let it run, and this may be after driving it for 20 minutes or so, and take like a beach towel or a bath towel and see if it will stick to the radiator or the grill itself. That fan should be pulling enough air in there to kind of suck that towel to the grill and kind of hold it there. It shouldn't fall off. That's one test. The other test is when it's good and hot. If you just visually watch the fan blade and get somebody to shut it off for you, it shouldn't, when you shut that engine, the fan rotation should stop roughly about the time the engine stops. If you see it freewheel for 5 to 10 seconds after that, that fan clutch isn't doing its job.
Oh, okay. All right.
What I think he's mentioning there, Danny, is that you, with airflow going across it, your natural airflow from the riding down the road, you're doing okay. But when you stop and you don't have the natural airflow, that fan's supposed to take the place of that. And what he's looking for is what might be affecting that. Now, one thing that he also mentioned about checking the coolant level,
right? You
want to make sure the inside of the radiator is also full of coolant.
Right.
Because your coolant jug can be full, but
that one has a expansion tank.
The expansion tank.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, if what you're seeing it's showing full, then it's got to have enough in there.
Right.
And that system sort of bleeds itself, so it's not going to be air. So, it does sound like some type of fan clutch problem.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Danny, thank you very much for the call. And And give us a call, and the number is 706-863-5800. Answers to your automotive questions. And also, if you have a back-to-school tip that you want to share with us, give us a call and share that tip with others. And it is getting close to that time. And it's also getting close to that time for us to do a fuel report. We hadn't did that yet. And I want to mention that the national average price for regular unleaded gasoline has dropped for 12 consecutive days, and it's the longest consecutive decline since January, and today's national average price is $2.71 per gallon, which is a nickel per gallon less than a week ago and 7 cents less than a month ago. And most drivers are paying their lowest July prices since 2009, or paid the least in July than they have since 2009. And they're saving about 82 cents a gallon at the pump. John Ryan, what's the gas or fuel selling for now?
Oh, around.
You only know diesel, though, right?
Well, I haven't put gas in anything in a long time.
Okay, but fuel is relatively stable right now.
Yeah, it is.
And doing fairly well. Okay, and again, number 706-863-5800. Give us a call, but it is time for us to take a real quick break. And two really big reasons to slow down in school zones. We'll tell you what those are as soon as we return from this break.
Welcome to the C&C Auto Show. This hour is brought to you in part by BG Products.
Welcome back into the C&C Automotive Show on AM 580 and 95.1 FM, News Talk WGAC. Your chance to get free advice about your automobile each and every Saturday from 8:05 until 10 here on WGAC. Call 706-863-5800 or a free call on the Verizon Wireless Network at star 580. Without further ado, let's go to downtown Augusta. Here's Aaron and JR from the beautiful studio down at C&C Automotive on 10th and Telfair with more of the C&C Automotive Show.
And the number one reason to slow down in a school zone is safety. Traffic is congested and the kids are everywhere. The chances of serious accidents increase with the speed. The second reason to slow down is that many school zones in Georgia are zero tolerance. That means you get a big ticket. They're zero tolerance enforcement areas, and they're patrolled heavily, strictly enforced, and the fines can ruin your year.
And your record.
Yeah, and your record. So you don't want a driving too fast in a school zone ticket. And those will be handed out. And plus, your insurance can increase for many years if you get one of those tickets. So you don't want to do that.
Troy says he's got one if anyone can remove it.
Yeah.
He's looking for somebody to remove it.
Yeah, they're not good. Okay, again, the number 706-863-5800 if you got a question about your car, truck, or SUV. And, of course, we're still getting a lot of air conditioning type issues on cars. If you've got an air conditioning system that is not getting as cold as it should get,
right,
and you check it out and you say that, well, maybe it's doing okay and it'll make it till the end of the year and I'll worry about it next year. Well, the bad part is if you keep running it, you may have a ruined compressor by next year. Because
it's kind of like overdoing your mileage. You know the oil changes due, but you go 4,000, 5,000.
Exactly. Well, what you run into is if the air's not as cold as it is, of course, it's going to be more than likely low in refrigerant.
Yeah.
The refrigerant is what carries the refrigerant oil, and that's what keeps the compressor lubricated. So if you're driving with low refrigerant, then you also driving it with low circulation in the compressor. Right. And by the time you do get it, you may already hear a knocking noise coming from the compressor, and by then it is losing compression and going bad. So recommend going to it.
Downward spiral from there.
It is.
And too, it's important to mention not only that's an outside problem, I guess you would call it, or under a hood problem. There's a lot of interior problems with AC systems now these days with all the automatic temperature control, the blend doors and stuff like that. There's not much maintenance you can do short of the cabin air filter, but from time to time these vehicles are so computer controlled and have electronic motors that are controlling so many things. You may run into the AC system operating perfectly fine outside the hood. The pressures look good, refrigerant's full, but you could have a blend door problem or a mixture door. So it's not always, 10, 20 years ago, my AC doesn't work, I need a whole system. Well, the system may be functioning properly. It may need something relatively inexpensive inside the vehicle to make that
And
AC
one side
work.
might be plenty cold and the passenger side might be hot.
And we just recommend switching the seats around for that.
And then people fight over who's going to get to drive so they can stay cool when they go. And a lot of times, like you said, there's not a lot of maintenance you could do on that, but that could be just a vent door because you only have one AC system that's performing all of that. It's just vent doors that determine how much air goes across the evaporator to keep you cool as opposed to across the heater core to warm you.
Right.
And if that door is messed up, it can, even though you're got it programmed for AC, it could be moved to heat.
Right, exactly.
Okay, now it's time for our auto info corner.
What you got?
All right, what we got? Now, I read about this in the news, and it's a big thing for Chrysler right now. Fiat Chrysler must offer to buy back more than 500,000 Ram pickups and other vehicles from customers in the biggest such action in U.S. history, and the Italian automaker also faces a record civil fine of $105 million. In addition, owners more than 100 million older Jeeps with vulnerable rear-mounted gas tanks will be able to trade them in or be paid by Chrysler to have the vehicles repaired. And at least 75 people have died from fires. And
I've heard of this, but what's the reason they're doing this for the
fuel
Ram?
tank is not protected enough.
Well, that's the Jeep. What about the Ram?
The same thing.
Same thing. Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
it has to do with the way the fuel tank is mounted is what their issue is. Okay, are we ready to go to some calls?
Yeah, I'm ready to go over to Ron. Are you?
Great idea. I'm sitting on go. And good morning, Ron. Welcome to the show, and what can we help you with?
Good morning, fellas. Happy, August.
Happy Saturday.
It looks like, yeah. You're talking about your gas prices. We also got to remember Iran wants to get back in the game, and they're going to be opening their fields up again soon. So you're going to have a bigger glut. Now, whether OPEC is going to try to counter that and start shutting down productions, it can only get cheaper.
Well, I hope that we produce enough oil to where we don't have to buy a drop, and I hope that we get more energy efficient and are able to have alternative sources, because there's more and more alternative sources coming about for vehicles now.
Yeah.
And of course you have your hybrids, you have your EV cars, full electric. You also have some hydrogen starting to hit the markets just a little bit. And of course, diesels are coming much more efficient than ever before. There's diesels that you don't even hear them running now that get great fuel mileage. So there's a lot of changes, and I would just love it if they produced as much oil as they want and had to sit on every bit of it.
For
myself, that's just my feelings.
Right.
But I think we should be energy independent.
Yeah.
Well, just as a tip now for these kids going back to school, you know, I go out to Walmart sometimes at night or just go out shopping, and I see kids up at 9, 10 o'clock at night. You know, I know it's got to do with parenting, but if you was to get your kids into bed at a reasonable hour, and I'm talking about letting them get at least 8 hours, 9 hours of sleep for these kids, so that they can function properly. A lot of these kids get off. I'll watch them get off the school bus or get on the school bus. They're half asleep. They can't see the danger coming at them. So if they would, get the kids to go to bed, I don't know what it would take to do it.
Well, maybe if you could at least get them at 11.
Ron, I have the answer for that. I think all electronic devices should just die at a certain time, say 9 o'clock at night.
Cut their iPad.
They go to bed.
Exactly.
They go to bed quick.
John Ron's going to get hate mail.
I'm good with it.
Send all your mail to, GAC down there off of...
We're just hoping you give your address, Ron.
Oh, please don't. But, with the heat that's going out there now with the automobiles, I meant to ask Tripp this morning when I called into his show, is there a tree that I could plant in the back of my pickup truck that would provide enough shade wherever I went?
There you go.
You get out, some of these parking lots, they don't have a shade tree nowhere.
Plant a weeping willow back there.
Some kind of weeping willow or something.
Ron, I got to mention this to you real quick. You're going to like this. This is really neat. When I toured the Ford plant in Rogue, Michigan, the Rogue Ford F-150 plant, it was really neat. One of the things that they did on a huge roof, I mean, it was huge. There's a special plant that you can plant on top of the roof that absorbs water. And a little bit of the water still ran off, but most of the water was, it was like a plant, and you didn't have to cut it, and the whole roof was like that. And of course, it created oxygen and absorbed the water. So it's a really neat setup. They've had it about 10 years.
I thought you were going to tell Ron about the AC unit, the window unit you saw in the bed of the truck.
I did see that one time. A truck was just going down the road and had a regular home AC unit sitting in the back of the truck with the ductwork running to the back window of the truck.
And generator running window.
If you're talking about Ford, now I can understand Henry Ford never missed a opportunity to either save money or to make money.
Yes.
He was the inventor of the barbecue briquette. Because of all the wood that he had left over from building the frames and stuff that he would, one of his workers come up with the idea and said, why don't you just put them into charcoal briquettes and sell them? And you used to go down to the Ford dealership and buy a bag of charcoal briquettes.
How about that?
Look, you guys have a great weekend, and don't take it lightly.
Ron, we will not. And you have a great weekend also. Okay, the number is 706-863-5800. I'm a little worried that we don't have time for our travel tip that we need. No, our fuel-saving tip that we have here. So, I'll tell you what. I think we do. I'm going to just do it real quick. If you have 500 to 1,000-mile trip planned and people are going with you, consider driving. By the time you get to the airport early, by the time you do all the things that need to be done to get to the airport, you probably can drive and you can still have a nice conversation with all the people, getting to know them a lot better. So that's a very quick one. Okay, again, the number, 706-863-5800. We're going to be taking a real quick news break, so stick with us through the news. We're going to leave it cranked up, and we're going to come back out and put it back in gear and take off very shortly. And I'll tell you what, when we return, I'll tell you what the most important conversations you can have with your teenager driver should include. That and a lot more as soon as we return.
C&C Automotive, your car care pros.
All right, everybody, welcome back to more of today's C&C Automotive Show here on AM 580 and 95.1 FM. News Talk WGAC. Call into the show at 706-863-5800. A free call on the Verizon Wireless Network at star 580. Now let's go back to downtown Augusta. Here's Aaron and JR with more of today's C&C Automotive Show.
And before we get started, good, I'm going to mention one real quick thing. The Metro Spirit elections or best of election is there. Mm-hmm. So you can vote. You can go to metrospirit.com or metro.com, whichever one it is. And there's a category there for best place to get my car repaired. And wink, wink. we would love to do that. And John Ryan, you mentioned if somebody brought their laptop by, you would kind of show them how to do that.
Yeah, we can arrange that for you.
Yeah, we can arrange showing you how to do it.
For a minute or two.
Yeah,
get that done.
No, we would love for you to go in and vote on the Metro Spirit deal.
Only if we deserve it.
Yeah, only if we deserve it. Absolutely right. Okay, we are back with you on the C&C Auto Show. We are here to give you information on ways to make your car, truck, or SUV safer, to make it more dependable, and to make it last longer for less money. We're answering automotive questions and talking about back-to-school driving at the same time. Now, we have different back-to-school driving tips, and the one that we have at the beginning of this segment is having an important conversation with your teenage driver. And I recommend having a conversation a day if you can, possibly. And the conversation should include letting them know how much you love them and how dangerous it is to text and drive. Do whatever you need to do to give them a reminder of that, a note on the dash asking them to lay the phone in the seat or the console until they stop. And whatever you need to do, just do that. And you want to do it in a loving way, though. And if you have, if you want to do that and just give them a little reminder in the car, would be very nice. Okay, I'll mention one more thing just before we go to the calls. If you have a repair facility that you know and trust, give them a call. If you do not have a repair facility that you know and trust, go to NapaAutoCare.com and you can search for a shop that's right for you. With over 15,000 Napa Auto Care facilities, there's bound to be one that's right for you. And we are ready to go to the phone calls. Where are we going?
All right, Aaron, let's go over to Philip.
Great idea. Perfect. Good morning, Philip, and what could we help you with today?
I have a 2003 Toyota Highlander V6, and we've recently put a new belt on. And when we start off in the morning, if the air conditioner's on and set on high, there's still a squeal going on, and of course it goes right away in about 5 seconds. So I was wondering what I should check next.
Philip, did you put the belt on yourself?
No, I did not.
Oh, okay. I was just going to ask you what you felt like the tension was. That vehicle has an automatic belt tensioner that is, of course, just a spring-loaded tensioner that's supposed to keep the proper amount of tension on it. There's really two things that could go on here. Really, a belt with a weak tensioner that's not holding enough spring pressure on it can cause that. And then, well, the main reason it can cause it is because, of course, when the AC cuts on and cycles, it's requiring a lot of, rotational force from that belt to turn the pulley. So that's why it squeals when the AC's on. The other thing could be the compressor. If it's undercharged and doesn't have enough lubrication in it, or if it's overcharged and has too much, it can cause that compressor to have a hard time starting up, which of course the belt's turning it. So if the compressor's having a hard time, it's going to squeal the belt also. Have you had the AC system checked at any point recently?
I had a new condenser put in about 3 weeks ago. Yes.
Okay, well that I'm hoping they didn't overcharge it, but if they overcharge the system, when that compressor cuts on, it's fighting a higher pressure than really it should. So that could be.
It was also doing it before the belt. The belt actually broke, and I had that replaced, and then charged up, and the condenser put in. So it was doing it before, also. But I thought when the belt was put on that it would stop.
Right. Yeah. Did you mention why the belt broke? Was it just old or?
I think it was very old. It was shredded.
Right. With you mentioning that, I do worry a little bit more about the compressor because if the compressor is requiring a lot to get going and starting off, it kind of, the belt can slip on it and cause a lot of heat, and of course, it will make that belt last nowhere near as long as it should. So I would recommend, getting a good AC system check on it just to make sure the refrigerant levels are correct. And then also in our AC inspection, it does check that belt tensioner also. So.
And Philip, the only last thing I might mention is I'm not sure what kind of belt was put on there, but sometimes you can get a belt that's made with a very hard compound and it might not grip as good as it should. So there is always that small chance that it could be something to do with the belt itself, but I really lean a little bit more toward what John Ryan's mentioning about the tension or what it's taken to start that compressor off being a little excessive and maybe causing some problems there.
Is there any way to check the compressor by hand?
No, sir, not really. Of course, if you had the belt off, you could definitely spin the pulley, but there's going to be no way for you to spin the internal components of the compressor. No doubt you can turn it, one rotation with your hand, but you could never turn it fast enough to kind of mimic what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If it's a compressor with it, if you don't have it on high, would it still have those same results?
Yeah, the blower speed actually shouldn't really affect it much because on that particular AC system, the AC is either on or off. Mainly because what you're changing when you turn it on high is the actual speed of the blower motor that's, of course, forcing the air down the vents or through the ducts.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it wouldn't hurt to do that one last thing that John Ryan mentioned. Just let them redo the AC system and ensure that the right amount of refrigerant's in there. And if it is, and the belt is good, and the tension's right, and everything else is there, there's not going to be much doubt that you're going to end up having some compressor problems sooner or later.
All right.
Okay?
That does not go around the alternator then, I guess, that belt.
Yes, sir, it does.
It does?
It does.
Okay. So you don't think it would be the alternator?
Well, there is a possibility, but what we were kind of timing it with is what you were mentioning about how when the AC cuts on, that's when it seems to do it.
Okay.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate
have
the call.
a good weekend. And the number is 706-863-5800. If you got a question about your car, truck, or SUV, you just give us a call, and we will give you our opinion on there. And also, if you got a back-to-school driving tip, don't hesitate to call about that. And we have we added a segment into the show because I think there's so many neat little things that you can buy for vehicles now that can make your driving easier. And the name of it is Car Gadgets. Mm-hmm. And so here's one that I thought I might mention this morning that I think it's a really neat deal for everyone to have. And this particular one is a It's the jump box.
Yeah.
And of course, jump boxes has been around for many years, but they in the past have been very heavy and bulky, and you had to keep them charged on a regular basis. And now they're making these jump boxes much, much smaller than ever before. You can actually, some of them you can even fit in your glove box.
Yeah, very small.
And it's really kind of amazing how well they do. These little bitty boxes, you can just, I've seen them hooked to a dead battery and be able to crank it up. They may not have a lot of reserve to where you can spin them over for long, long periods of time, but they give the boost that most cars need, and they stay charged for a very long period of time. And they're really neat little things. And I think one of them is Blue Flame is a good model, but also they have little USB ports so you can power up your phones and things along those lines. You can get them, if you get one a little larger, you can get one that runs a laptop for a period of time.
A lot of people are using them for a laptop for extended storage or battery storage.
Yeah, and I see the prices range from $50 to several $100 depending on what kind you get. But they're really neat. I think it's something that if you like to get some work done while you're using a laptop, or you want a spare in case your cell phone battery goes dead, or if you're concerned that your battery may go dead and you want a backup system to jump it off with, I think that it can be a very, very good system to get on there. So getting that is good. Again, want to mention that our phone number is 706-863-5800. And we will mention a fuel-saving tip is something that we also want to go ahead and mention that we have. And the fuel-saving tip this week is don't wait until you're almost empty to get fuel, because waiting until you get fuel reduces your options of where you could go buy fuel.
Right.
How many times have you been low in gas and very low, and you look and a fuel station is ahead, but they're much higher than normal, but you say, well, I have to go ahead and go there because I'm not going to make it to another station.
Right.
So you would tend to go ahead and do that. So it's much, you may pay more for the fuel that you get. Other times you may have to go out of your way to get fuel because you were low. And then other times, it may be a case to where you don't get to use your little award points that you may be able to use.
Yeah, your points, yeah.
Exactly. So you do want to go ahead and keep the reserve. Now, the other thing that letting the fuel run low, and of course, what's that do to the fuel system?
It wreaks havoc on the fuel pump. The reason is of course, every fuel tank has a reserve, obviously, for your low fuel light. When it comes on, there's a small chamber that, of course, the fuel sets in, and the fuel pump's also in that. And what happens is when you run it low, under normal circumstances, if it's full or 3/4, whatever, that fuel pump's completely submerged in fuel. If it's run low, it's not in fuel, and it increases the temperature of the fuel pump and really just decreases the life.
Right. And also, a lot of the dirt and debris in the system is kind of condensed into that one little area.
Right.
So, in other words, it lets the fuel pump go bad.
Yeah, we got a few more minutes before we break.
I'm ready. Yeah, let's go to the calls.
All right. Good morning, Andrew. Thanks for joining the show.
Hey, I've got a 97 Ford Ranger, and it's time for a tune-up. Is that something that I can attempt myself, or should I carry it to a professional?
Definitely, that one's not a horrible one to get to. Everything's pretty accessible. The spark plugs are relatively easy to remove. The biggest thing, on spark plugs is make sure you hand start them. Don't start them with a ratchet or anything, and take the risk of course, cross-threading the cylinder head. The plug wires, I would just recommend doing them one by one because, of course, there is a firing order involved there. So if you did, replaced one, lined it up with a new one as far as length and everything, then put it on there. A fuel filter, the fuel filter does require a special disconnect tool. So that would be something you'd either have to purchase or maybe take that to another shop. And then, the other things, PCV valve, air filter, obviously I feel confident you could do those. All in all, I think that's one you could do in the driveway.
Okay, and does it got aluminum heads on it?
No, it does not. It has regular steel cast heads.
Okay, all right. That was one thing I was afraid of is like you said, cross-threading or stripping out of.
Yeah, as long as you hand start them, just with the socket, they unless you have any issues, with removing them, they normally go right back in.
And would you recommend removing those with the engine cold or engine hot?
I would do cold on that. It's a good idea to also, on your new spark plugs on the thread portion, is to apply a little anti-seize, which of course you can get that at Napa. A lot of times if you buy the parts from Napa, they're going to recommend anti-seize and dielectric grease
and
also.
make sure the plugs are gap right, and also check the PCV system as you're doing it, just to make sure that that's flowing good.
Yep. One thing that you probably wouldn't be able to do unless you had this piece of equipment, one thing that would really do that vehicle justice is a BG Carbon Clean. That's a chemical, the 3-part chemical that goes in front of the throttle body, and really, it basically deteriorates all that carbon buildup chemically and in the intake manifold, through the cylinder heads, the back of the valves, on out through the exhaust. And that's probably one of our favorite services, because that's a service you can actually feel. It idles better, has more power, and really just does a real good justice for that vehicle.
But you can do the tune-up, and then if you want the
just
induction
swing it by
service done,
somewhere and get
do
an
that.
induction service.
All right. Well, could I just call y'all's office, I guess, and get a price for all that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay. All righty. All right. Thank you.
Thanks,
Andrew, thank you very much. We're going to take a real quick break. When we return, I'll give tips on a class that you should give to kids before they go to class, and we'll be right back.
She's real fine, my 409. She's real fine, my 409, my 409.
All right, everybody, welcome back. C&C Automotive Show continuing this morning here on WGAC. Your calls are welcome always at 706-863-5800. Free advice about your automobile each and every Saturday on the C&C Automotive Show. Now let's go back to downtown Augusta. Here's Aaron and JR with more of today's C&C Automotive Show.
And we're back and ready to answer your questions and also give more back-to-school driving tips. And if you have young kids started back to school, give them a back-to-school safety class. If they ride the bus, talk about obeying safety rules at the bus stop, getting on and off the bus, and riding the bus. If riding in a car, buckle those seat belts and obey all the rules, pedestrians, crosswalks, and all the good stuff that you normally do on there.
Don't walk behind the bus either.
Yeah, don't walk behind the bus. And, of course, most people know that if you see the little arm sticking out on the bus thing, don't try to drive past the bus if you're driving behind one. So
if you see that happen, just wave to Aaron.
yeah, just no, I wouldn't do that. Okay, now, if anyone has a question about their car, truck, or SUV, don't hesitate to give us a call. And again, the number is 706-863-5800, and we will be ready to answer those questions. And one of the things, I read an article recently in the newspaper, and it had to do with vehicle longevity. The average car that you see on the road now just hit another high at 11.5 years old.
Right.
And that's according to a consulting firm, IHS Automotive. And it said that a sign that one of the things that they think has to do with the longer age of the cars, people keeping their cars longer, has to do with increased reliability of today's vehicles and a lingering impact of the sharp drop in new car sales during the recession.
I was thinking it was more of the cost of a new one.
Well, that may play a part, but the car sales are higher than ever.
Yeah.
So it's not to do with the cost of the sales, but what's happening is people's buying a new car but hanging on to their old car.
Right.
But I'll tell you a reason that I think that the vehicles are lasting longer. Also, another reason. Now, of course, there is no question they're more reliable than ever. But I think the technicians that work on these cars are better than ever.
Yeah,
I mean, they're in. Not only that, the equipment that we have access to, the flushing, the brake fluid, flushing the transmission, all these things that it makes the car last longer. And this not only includes mechanical repairs, but collision repairs. There was a time when a car was hit a certain way, they'd have to total the car.
Right.
Now collision repairs come a long way also. They can repair cars that could never be repaired before.
Exactly.
And, of course, that makes it to where people keep cars longer.
Yep.
And I think it's a win-win all the way around.
It is.
Where we going?
All right, you ready to go to the phones?
I was born ready.
I knew you were. All right, let's go to Matthew.
Hey, Matthew. Welcome to the show, and what can we help you with?
How y'all doing today?
Just right.
Yep.
Good. I've got a 95 Chevrolet Z71 5.7 liter, and about 2 years back, I had a radiator leak in it, and I made the mistake of putting some stop leak in. I've had a couple issues since then. I've replaced the radiator in it, and I've had to replace all of my freeze plugs around the block. And I have flushed the radiator and the engine numerous times, but I still get that dark brown gunk showing up, and my water just turns brown, and I have no idea how to get rid of all that.
Matthew, that's something that is very frustrating. What you're running into is, of course, at one time or another, somebody's probably ran not exactly the right mixture of coolant in there. Too much water or maybe just straight water. And what's happened is the actual, the coolant jackets or the cavities that hold the coolant, and of course, in that engine block, have developed rust on the surface. And what happens is, you flush it out, even with the best of coolant, the proper mixture and everything, those cylinders or inside, or the cavities inside, are still have rust all in them. That's a very, very difficult thing to get out because, like you mentioned, you can flush it 2 times, 3 times, 5 times, and it still comes back muddy.
Right. I've had it professionally flushed, and I've done it myself several times. And the water starts running clear, as I flushed it, and as soon as I crank it back up and start running it again, lo and behold, it turns brown again.
Do you know if they used any chemical conditioner, like a BG type anything?
I'm not sure.
We do have a system, and again, it's not cut and dry like it's going to fix it for sure. We do have one that's got a coolant cleaner in there, and typically what you do is you add it when it's cold, go drive it until it gets to operating temperature, and of course the thermostat opens, now the coolant's circulating through the engine, and then from there, then we actually flush it out, and it no doubt it does help. It kind of equates to doing 2 coolant flushes in one, if that makes sense. 2 coolant flushes, doing the old way versus this one, and no doubt that definitely helps. But just what you're experiencing is something we see on a day-to-day basis, and it's very, very hard to get that out. The most important thing is still having that protection level. Yeah, there is such thing as, maybe not ideal, but there is such thing as good dirty coolant. It can have that rust in it and everything, but as long as the protection is there, that's essentially what the coolant's supposed to be doing.
Right.
Aaron, you got any more tips on that?
Just the same thing that you mentioned. The bad part is once it gets in there, I hate to say that, but you'll probably never get it all out. It's because it keeps forming. Once the rust is in there, you'll flush it out, and then it'll build up more because it's just there. But you should continue to, from time to time, flush a lot more often than normal, and like John Ryan mentioned,
decrease the possibility of you having future problems.
Exactly.
Too,
Yeah, you just control it is the main thing, is what you'd be doing, not solving the issue, but controlling the issue.
It's too bad you couldn't fill it up with a gallon of Rust-Oleum and
that would do it.
Fix it up.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, that would do it.
I figured it was going to be an issue that it was either next to near impossible to fix.
Right.
So,
well, when we do a flush, if we flush a vehicle and it's got that in there, we tell them beforehand that even though we flush it, 3 months later it's going to look the same way. Yeah. So it's just part of it. Okay.
As time's gone by, it hasn't been as thick. I've had to skunked up my thermostat a couple of times. I've had to replace it. Like I said, I've ended up having to replace 2 water pumps in the last 2 years because of this, I believe.
Right.
And also all my freeze plugs.
Yeah.
But hopefully.
Would you have a lot of problems like that along with keeping it flushed? I would have that system checked for electrolysis in the system. And electrolysis is a simple test. You just stick a voltmeter down there. It shouldn't have over a half a volt in the coolant. You may have some ground issues that's creating the coolant to be almost like a battery, and that can cause some water pumps to go bad early, heater cores, radiators, big cooling system. So you may have electrolysis issue with that truck too.
With the water pump, what it did is it created a little small hole on the back side of the water pump where that little, I think it's aluminum plate on the back of it.
Plate, yep.
The exact same spot both times, and about a year apart.
Yeah, I would have that checked because it sounds like you may very well have that issue, and solving it.
Is that something that y'all could handle down at the shop?
Oh yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Deal. Well, I'm at work today, otherwise I come down and see you guys. But I'll try to get some time off, and I'll come talk to you guys about it in person.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Matthew.
All right, I appreciate y'all's help.
And we appreciate you calling very much. And I don't really think we're going to have time for another. Well, we got time for another caller. Let's. Where we're going, John? Right?
All right, let's go to Ed.
Perfect. And good morning, Ed, and welcome to the show. And what could we help you with today?
Well, good morning, guys. I've got a 05 Honda CR-V, and it's got the central locking system, and it's gotten to the point where we had one of the doors that you hit the lock button, and it would lock all the doors except for one. And now, basically, you hit the button, it doesn't lock any of them. So I'm wondering what could be causing this. I know they've got actuators in each of the doors, but is there, if one fails, does it lead to a cascade effect, or what advice can you give on that?
Yeah, good question, Ed. Did they kind of go down in that way? Like, did the right rear door stop, then the next one, or?
Yeah, exactly.
Did it fall like dominoes?
Right, yeah.
Yes, sir.
It's crazy because we do see that. Matter of fact, we had an Impala. Friday, we replaced the last one in the last door, and they do that. The actuators, of course, is just a tiny little electronic motor that operates the lock rod, of course, that obviously locks and opens the door. And what happens over a period of time is, this is something I recommend doing, is those locks, the actual latch assembly that, of course, grabs hold of the body to keep the door closed. Over a period of time, those get, of course, road debris and gummy and sticky, and that motor has to work really, really hard to unlock the door. So unfortunately, we do see them kind of go from one door to the next, to the next, to the next. That's, in most cases. Now, there are other things, of course, the switches and stuff like that can cause that. But if one went and then the next one went and then the next one went, and, the switch was working the whole time, sounds like you have some bad actuators.
Oh, so that each one of the actuators would be bad then?
Right, yeah. Yeah, and no doubt there's, you would want to be confident in knowing that you're replacing the actuators for a reason. You want to actuate that switch and see if it's got 12 volts going to the actuator, to tell it to turn on, and then the same thing for unlock to be sure, because, of course, getting in there and replacing all those would be quite time consuming. Price-wise, not exactly sure. Vehicles vary so much. A Chevrolet door actuator might be $30, and a Honda one might be $80. Just kind of depends. But unfortunately, we've seen that a lot of the CRVs, and even the Pilot, the little bit bigger one. Same similar problems. So
interesting. Well, just a rough guesstimate to have a system repaired like that. What would be a swag on that?
Aaron's the guesstimator. That's what I call him.
Talking about on the solenoid, or you're talking about a door lock actuator. Yeah, it is not uncommon at all to run somewhere in the 175 to 225 range, depending on the price of the solenoid, and getting it on. And, of course, you don't know beyond a shadow of a doubt that that's the problem until you pull the door panel off. So I normally tell people that pull the door panel off, runs 52, and then if it is the solenoid, it would run somewhere in that range between the 175, 225 to replace. Of course, we give an exact price then as we're doing it.
After Ed heard that, he just wants the driver's one fixed.
Yeah.
Because that's per, right?
Yeah, that is per solenoid when they're bad. Now, of course, the other thing you want to do is check things like to make sure the voltage is up like it should be, stuff like that. But with them going one at a time, I lean toward what John Ryan mentioned, one going bad at a time.
Wow. Okay. Well, it is an 05. Maybe it's time for a new car now.
Hey, Ed, if you do decide to get those repaired, just kind of think, every other oil change, or if you can just keep it in the back of your mind to lubricate all those latches, those will last a long, long time.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good advice, and thanks for giving it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, appreciate your time, guys.
And we appreciate it also. And the number is 706-863-5800. We're going to take a real quick break. And when we get back, I'm going to give you a reason why during the morning time, carrying the kids to school, that it might be a good idea to cut the radio off. We'll tell you that as soon as we get back.
Welcome back into the C&C Automotive Show on AM 580 and 95.1 FM, News Talk WGAC. Your chance to get free advice about your automobile each and every Saturday from 8:05 until 10 here on WGAC. Call 706-863-5800 or a free call on the Verizon Wireless Network at star 580. And without further ado, let's go to downtown Augusta. Here's Aaron and JR from the beautiful studio down at C&C Automotive on 10th and Telfair with more of the C&C Automotive Show.
And we'll be going straight to those phone calls any second now. But first, I want to mention that riding to school is a great time to get to know your kids. Consider cutting the radio down low or off until you drop the kids off. And once you drop the kids off, you can turn it back up and listen to your news and get all plugged in again. But go ahead and have that conversation with the kids on the way to school. It can be a lot of fun, a lot of good for the kids too. Okay, where are we going?
All right, Aaron, let's go to Lisa.
Great. Good morning, Lisa, and welcome to the C&C Auto Show. What can we help with?
Thank you. I bought a Ford Focus that was still under factory warranty in 2014. And it's been in the shop for the same exact reason relating to the transmission 4 times now, and actually 5 times, but the 5th time they've now decided, even though Ford increased the warranty to 100,000 miles, now they're saying that it's not covered. And I basically picked the car up and I'm bringing it home because they obviously aren't going to fix it. And I'm trying to figure out how do I pursue the lemon law now.
Lisa, I am familiar. We're familiar with that transmission issue. They have had a fit with those things. It's kind of funny. It's the daily driver cars that they're actually having that problem with the transmission. If it's a 16-year-old kid that drives it really hard, it does okay. And if it's a slower driver, it does okay. But it's kind of the in-between problem that they're having. And they really just haven't worked out the bugs as far, because it's kind of a newer technology transmission for Ford at this time. And no doubt I've heard a lot of people say the very same thing. Hey, they tried this, they tried this, and they tried this multiple times. And you're right. Unfortunately, I don't know of a very good long-term fix for that just yet. Definitely hope to hear for something, but I'm sure that can be quite frustrating for you.
Yeah, and as far as the lemon law part, if you wanted information on that, I would recommend first asking the Better Business Bureau the information on how to go about carrying out the paperwork on that. Now, I do know that there's certain situations to where they'll first ask, try to cover things to make different recommendations on what to do. And then once they make those recommendations, they'll ask you to carry the vehicle, get documentation from the number of times you've taken it back. And there's a certain number of times.
I've got all my documentation, and I've got my contract. When I bought it, it was under factory warranty. And I've got the letter from Ford that says it's covered for 100,000 miles for the transmission. And obviously it's the transmission, but they're saying, oh, well, now we got to tear it all the way apart and take it all down, and that's just not going to be covered. And it just seems to me like they've done a Band-Aid all this time, and now that it's over 60,000 miles, just over 60, at 62, they're saying now I'm going to have to pay out of pocket.
Yeah, I believe I would contact the Better Business Bureau and just talk to them about the process of doing that. Now, hopefully what they will do is be a mediator between the two, because many times you may have just, on some occasions, got a hold to the wrong person to talk to, or they didn't do the things they did. But it sounds like to me that it would be very nice if you had somebody who would step in the middle there and say, if they did this, would that be okay? And many times what they may do, because I used to do this for the Better Business Bureau many years ago, is they would have an independent person to check the vehicle out, let them know what it's needed, and then they would try to work out a compromise between the person and the dealership or the company that's involved, and try to mediate it that way without going through through other legal processes.
Yeah, the only thing I'm a little confused on is it's still under warranty. So what would if they're going inside the transmission, what would they, be having to pay for out of pocket?
Well, I think what she mentioned is they worked on it and did things by just taking it apart and putting it back together and repairing little things until it got out of the warranty.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, and once it's out of warranty, they're saying, well, it's out of warranty. But if you got all the documentation saying they have repaired it those many times, you definitely should sit down and talk to them. And I would talk to a manager at the company. I wouldn't talk to just a service advisor. Say you would like to make an appointment for the representative of that company and the manufacturer together, and tell them that that's impossible. Say, well, you're willing to do it on Thursday, or if they say Thursday at 4 o'clock, make it at Thursday 4 o'clock. But it can be done, and of course, it sounds like you're the type person who's not going to do this anyway. But one thing I found, it does no good to go in there with guns blazing and fussing. Just sit down and present your case to the person, and it sounds like if you do that, then you'll have one of them that will listen to you.
For sure.
Well, I've had an open case with Ford, and it's a regional manager that I've been dealing with, and I spoke to her yesterday, and she said she spoke to the service center, and they tell her that it has to be torn down, and there's just no way that they can guarantee that what they find is going to be covered under warranty, and I just don't trust that once I have to give them permission to do all that, and once I do, then I'm liable for that cost.
Right.
And it just
Yeah,
seems to
I
be
believe I'd
where
contact
we've
the Better Business Bureau and talk to, or you may even want to have an independent check the vehicle out and find out if it's something that's going to cause you a problem. I mean, if some cars do have a hiccup that's not going to cause another problem on the road, and it may be something you can say, well, if I'm okay, you might decide to say, well, I can live with it until they come up with a fix. But if it's something that's definitely going to need to be repaired or cause you to break down or have a problem, you may come back and say, well, something has to be done, and then the next step I'd say BBB.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for calling. Great question. The number is 706-863-5800. Where are we going, John Ryan?
Let's go over to Ray.
And good morning, Ray, and welcome to the C&C Auto Show. What can we help with?
Thank you, Aaron. We've got I'm going to get right to it. We've got a 2002 Toyota 4Runner, two-wheel drive.
Mm-hmm.
The deal is that when you put it, we were taking a short trip up to Columbia, South Carolina yesterday, and it's happened before, and this is not the first time. When you're going down the road and you put it in cruise control, you're going up a steep hill, and you know how the cruise control will kick in.
Right.
Okay. Well, when you do, it's not a serious little thing, but it has a little, what I call a little hiccup in the cruise control, like it kind of like a little herky-jerky. I call it. It's like it's not wanting to stay in cruise control, but it does. I mean, it doesn't cut off or anything, but it's just kind of a herky-jerky in it that it's not very, very noticeable, but you can tell that it's not wanting to stay in. You got any ideas or thoughts on that? You or JR?
Ray, I got a question for you. When you're going downhill, is the problem more when the throttle is supposed to pick back up, like it's real abrupt and it just doesn't quite feel as smooth as it once did?
We bought the car secondhand. We've only had it about 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
And it'll do like the engine will rev real quick when it starts to kick into cruise control.
Right.
And you hear it doesn't jerk or anything, but you feel it, the engine rev.
Right.
And then of course as it goes on up the hill, it gets to a certain point as it's revving up that it's got that little herky-jerky thing, I call it, in it.
Right. Ray, that is cable-driven. It has a little motor over there on the kind of by the brake master cylinder, and it has a cable that basically just pulls the throttle, and, of course, depending on what speed you're wanting to go, it kind of maintains it and everything. The reason I mention that is, no doubt, that's adjustable, and you can make it a little, have slack in it. You can make it to be a little tighter. So I would definitely either you or have a shop take a look at all the linkage in the cables to make sure they're properly adjusted, because if it has a lot of slack in it, what you'll experience is going down a hill, of course the vehicle's coasting and everything, and then time you climb that hill, it kind of dies off speed, and then sometimes it'll even downshift to where it'll really catch and take off on you. So I'm kind of leaning towards that right now, just because we don't really see any problems with that vehicle short of an adjustment issue.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds like a fairly easy fix then.
Well, it sounds cheap, doesn't it?
Yes.
Better than a cruise control motor.
Oh, yes. anything on not being ugly with the Toyota because I love them. I've had them for years. But anything on the Toyota you fix,
Yes,
you
sir.
better have deep pockets.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Well, Ray, we appreciate the call.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, sir.
And number 706-863-5800. We're going to need to take a real quick final break, and we will be right back just after this.
Traffic jam that makes me the bitter. All right, everybody, welcome back to more of today's C&C Automotive Show here on AM 580 and 95.1 FM. News Talk WGAC. Call into the show at 706-863-5800. A free call on the Verizon Wireless Network at star 580. Now let's go back to downtown Augusta. Here's Aaron and JR with more of today's C&C Automotive Show.
And we still got a little over a minute and a half, so let's go to Bob in North Augusta. Good morning, Bob.
How are you guys?
Doing great. What can we help with?
Quickly. I talked to an old guy, and he told me how to fix my truck.
All right.
And, yes, and he told me it was in the radiator cap. It's skipping, sputtering, and he said it's in the radiator cap. The radiator cap will fix it.
Uh-huh.
You ain't got an idea? He's a real old guy.
Now, he's not going to say something along the lines of drive another car under it.
Oh, how do you know that?
Take the radiator cap off, drive a new one under it, put it back on.
I have heard that before when you're having a lot of issues with the car.
Shock you guys because y'all know everything.
Yeah.
Bob, we used to say install a flush handle, flush it down the toilet.
Okay. All right, guys. Y'all have a good weekend. Enjoy your show.
Bob, we thank you very much. We needed a real good laugh to end the show on. Very nice. And we
I got one for you.
Oh! We have Nerf gun fights in here, and he just got me. Okay. We want to say thank you very much for everyone that tuned in and all of those that logged in, and especially those that called into the radio show. I want to remind you that you can also go to the YouTube channel. That's YouTube, then go to the C&C Auto Show on YouTube and watch us there. You can also follow us on Facebook, and we'll be glad to give tips and things like that to help with that area. And we want to thank you again, and want to mention one more thing. Please be careful. All the kids will be going back to school very soon. Keep an eye out for those school buses. Keep an eye out for kids. Have a good week, and we will see you next week on the C&C Auto Show.
Your car care pros. WGAC.